Today, my friends, we're looking at the FMS Chevy K10. This is a 1/18th model, and we're doing this fresh off the tail of the FMS Jimny. And you know, ever since I did the Jimny review, I've been seeing Jimnys driving around all over the place. It's funny how that works. Frequency bias, I think it's called. It comes in this attractive EPP, expanded polypropylene foam, recyclable, and quite durable. You know, this is the same stuff they make model airplane wings from these days, and fuselages. Oh, we've got a remote in the lid here, and we have the truck here, and the bed is open. And one or two of you said in the comments that you were interested in the K10, and I thought, well, you know what? The Jimny was really nice. We should take a look at the K10. So, sticker on the hood, just like on the Jimny. Have a look at this. That chrome finish is just superb. There's a full interior. And you saw me closing the tailgate while I talked. That closes with these little clips here. I see wiring underneath. So we've got at least one set of LEDs for the rear and a few in the front. Wheel wells, even in the front, which is wonderful to see. Coilover springs and just friction shocks. This is what the Pioneer did as well. This thing does have full link suspension in the rear, which is fine, with very laid down shocks. But the front has full link and a panhard because it's a chassis mounted servo, a little 1 kilo servo. Just like on the Pioneer and any truck that does this, aside from having bump steer, it doesn't articulate on the right side as easily as the left. And I think if we remove the rod that's on the opposite side to the panhard from memory, I think that's the one to remove, then we'll get better articulation without compromising it. So we can fiddle with that later on. It's a different control system to what's in the Jimny. This little bit of electronics here does the servo and the lights and the motor. It's the ESC as well. So it's another all-in-one unit, and it comes with the same little battery, the same little 380 milliamp hour 2S battery that sits in the end there. LiPo charger, so again, you've got a 20-25 minute charge time. I decided to film this morning, so I plugged it in on the way to the school drop-off before I came here, and it's done. It was done really quickly. So we'll park that up for a sec, and I'd like to have a look at the radio. This is an interesting system, this. It's usable for small hands. It takes 4 AAAs by the look of it. It's actually an awkward little battery compartment. It's certainly secure. I don't know that it needs a double set of covers to shut though. Now, this is an interesting little radio system. It's got a nice foam grip on the steering wheel. It's pleasing in the hand. It's very compact. Certainly it's a one-hand driver to the point where it's almost too small, which is good for many hands. It looks a bit like a car. It's got little headlights on it. How strange. What's weird about this radio, or interesting I should say, is you've got presumably channel 3 button there. There's channel 4, which says training, so I guess that'll limit the throttle. Channel 5, climbing. And channel 6, which I'm gonna guess cycles through the lights, I'm not sure. I've actually read the manual before I sat down here to talk with you, and it wasn't hugely clear on how it all works. It took me a little while to work out the electrics for this thing, but I think I've got it sorted. Let me show you how the lights work. On the radio, there's an A and B mode, and if you change to the B mode, the throttle trim becomes a light setting. You've got 1, 2, it gets brighter on the second one, 3 with the hazards, and 4 everything off. Sorry, there are no indicators with everything off. And then there are indicators on headlight 1 and high beams, you still got indicators. When there are hazards, obviously that doesn't change anything. And then on number 4, just hazards. In all 4 modes, you get the red tail lights in reverse, but that's it. There are no indicators in the rear. One thing I did notice though was the reverse steering button, which is this top one here, when you're in mode B, becomes a steering angle, and you can set your endpoint max between 30%, 50%, and 100%. It's on a cycle. So you get maximum throw on the third one, but on the first one, it barely moves. That feature isn't particularly useful because you always want your maximum throw with this little model. If it was a fast car, I could understand why it might drop the throttle down, but it's a bit of a strange feature. A quick word on electronics while we plug the battery in. It's the same Little 180 motor that is in the Jimny. Nothing wrong with that. These are lightweight models, they're like half a kilo. Got suitably yellow headlights, which is very nice to see. Okay, so there are no rear indicators, but certainly front indicators. There are side indicator molds, but they don't light up. I don't see any endpoint setting for this thing, which is not ideal. There's no servo saver, and I see the bearings aren't shielded either. The electronics aren't waterproof, just so you know. You've got quite a long drive shaft, it's plastic and it comes all the way down to the back. The little transfer case and the little motors at the front there, and it's a flat little skid. There's a moulding in the plastic for a shorter chassis, but that's fine. The approach and departure angle are interesting. It's suitable for a pickup of this kind. I can see the wires for the lights, they come up through the bed. Maybe it would have been nice to stay inside the body there, but that's all right. Look, overall, it's a metal railed but plastic model otherwise. It doesn't weigh much, so it's not a big deal that you haven't got foams in the tires or you've got a tiny little motor or it's a 1 kilo servo. The servo seems actually quite adequate. It's not fast, but it's certainly not weak. And the car is attractive. And if you're buying this model, you're buying it because it's gorgeous. The two things that jump out at me straight away as being maybe of questionable design. One, it's these laid down shocks, which work at first, but as soon as it starts to articulate, like you really get, it's very soft there. The stiffness decreases as they cycle up. So not good for carrying loads. In some of the pictures, I don't know if it's on the box or not. Yeah, it is. In some of the materials, they've shown these little stones in the tray. You want more upright rear shocks. They're laid over at 45 degree. You want them more upright if you're carrying heavier loads. That's not going to be possible in this little car unless you change the shocks completely. The fronts are nearly upright, and that's, I think, better. It's just such a pretty truck. I think we should get it on the rocks. Let's do that. From out of the box, it's clearly a very useful drag brake. While I've been talking, I've been placing it on the sides of these rocks and it's been holding, which is nice. We're not going to do anything too crazy here because it's not designed for it. But even when I inevitably fail and tumble this thing, it's going to look amazing while it goes. Another thing I've noticed is every time I just bump this radio, just the slightest, it resets. And the truck takes a sec to re-establish a link. One thing I'd like to see, given this is not a fast truck, is the ESC simply going forward and back. The buttons on the radio seem to suggest that it is capable of doing that without having forward brake reverse. I just like forward reverse. There we go. Yeah, it's quite stable. I mean, that could have tumbled, but it didn't. It's quite a severe overhang. The departure angle is quite shallow by virtue of it being a pickup, but that's okay. I think that button number 5 that says crawling has worked. Now we've got forward and reverse, which is good, no brake. There's quite a lot of traction on these little tyres. That's really slippery stuff. This radio is so delicate that even just shaking it in my hand as I rearrange my hands, even just that quick adjustment with my hand caused the power to disconnect. That's not ideal. The spring under the battery I think just needs to be a bit stiffer. It's a little thing, but that's a quality of life thing just to be aware of. I know we're just mucking around on rocks, but this thing is really capable. I'm quite surprised, and it's raining now too. The rocks are wet and it's still going. This thing is really surprising me. So one thing that is quite irritating, every time I move this thing the wrong way, literally like a shake while I'm walking, you hear that beep every time? That's the battery losing contact and it has to re-establish. And every time that happens, it takes half a sec. There you go. Like it's literally 2 or 3 seconds before it reconnects. So you got to be careful using this thing when you just don't move it too suddenly or you lose connection. There's also no endpoint adjustment on the steering, which is disappointing. And my initial drive, these tires are super capable. This is one of the more capable models of this size I think I've ever driven, out of the box that is. So check RC-TNT.com. I'll have a write-up for this and I'll include a section where I explain actually how the buttons work and what they do. I did read the manual before I came out here today, but I couldn't quite make sense of it, so we'll get to that. It's more capable than I thought it would be, and although with the heavy body it's got a lousy center of gravity, that really adds to the fun. Steering's quite good. It's not completely equal, but it's pretty good, honestly. It's not a hugely scale-looking machine, but I quite like it. There are certainly worse ways to spend your money, that amount of money, on a model. Out of the box, it is a barrel of fun. The battery charges quickly, and it should give you a good half hour of runtime. It's got sufficient speed, and even though it's a single speed, it also has sufficient low-speed torque for crawling. So far, I'm quite impressed. It's certainly gorgeous. It's got a few strange things, from the falling suspension to those laid-down shocks to the really finicky remote. Be that as it may, it's a beautiful scale vehicle. The details inside the dash with the seat, the steering wheel and all the rest of it, it's super attractive, and even though the tyres don't have foams in them, they're surprisingly grippy. This performs just like you'd expect a pickup would, and I think this little truck is worthy of some playtime. It's not a serious crawler, but it's certainly gorgeous, and for a lot of us, a high degree of scale really does a lot to overcome deficits in the performance department, let's say. So I'm actually quite happy with this little thing, and if you like this kind of truck, I'd say it's worth picking it up. Throw me a like if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you next time on RC-TNT. Thanks for watching.